Okay. All right, everybody. We are live with another episode of Teen Talk Live. Well, actually, not quite live because of our technical difficulties. This has been pre-recorded, and I'm glad you're able to join us via this forum. So I am not going to belabor you, but again, welcome to Teen Talk Live. I'm Dillard. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and the host of this show. And we are entering into our 18th month of Teen Talk Live. Yes, and tonight we have a special guest. And this young lady and I, we've been connected through Facebook for the past, I think, 2 years. And it's just amazing to hear her story. And we've had this show booked for a few months now. And I'm just excited to be able to share it with you. So help me welcome to Teen Talk Live, Miss Mia Reid. Welcome, Mia.
Thank you for having me on, Ann.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you are here finally on Teen Talk Live, despite all the technical challenges that we're having. And you know, the thing that that really is propelling me to keep going and keep doing this production is because I believe that there is so much, somebody's going to be really blessed by what you have to say and what you have to share with them. So we're going to do our best to get it done, because I believe somebody's healing and somebody's deliverance is tied to you being here today.
Thank you.
Yes. And again, thank you also for taking time out of your busy schedule. It's graduation season, it's prom season, all that stuff is going on. And yet you took time to share with my audience about your struggles, your challenges, your trauma, your grief, and your healing. So again, welcome. Tell our audience, how do you serve in the world?
I am a clinical mental health therapist, and I have a private practice located in Southfield, Michigan. And primarily I see clients that are struggling with grief and trauma, but I also see clients that are struggling with depression and anxiety and family issues.
Okay, wonderful. And did you say Michigan?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, wonderful. You know, when I hear of Michigan, that there are just few cities that stand out, like Benton Harbor and Detroit. That's about it. That's about it for me. But let's jump right in and share with us, what is your experience with grief and trauma? Could you share your story with us?
Sure. I've had several different experiences with grief, but the one that stands out the most is when I lost my child. I had a son. His name was Charles Reid, and my firstborn, and he was 24 years old. And in 2011 of June, he was murdered. And I experienced grief and trauma. But at the time, I didn't know a lot about trauma, to be honest with you. I just thought I was having a really hard time with the grieving process. And I had a stigma for seeking help. I had a stigma for seeking help from therapy. And going to church, my pastor talked to me a lot, and I listened to him, and I prayed a lot, and it didn't seem like I was catching on to getting the help that I needed. So one day I was talking to my aunt because I was really sad, and she told me, you know what, it's time that you get some help. And so finally I developed the courage to seek out help. I am so glad I did. It was the best move I've ever made.
That's
But what
that you have your aunt who was so supportive of you, because you know a lot of times when we're going through stuff like that and you seem to get stuck in trauma, you'll hear people say, isn't it time to get over it, you know, stuff like that. But for her,
yeah,
the wisdom for her to share and say, not isn't it time to get over it, but it's time to get help.
she has a lot of wisdom, and also what she had that many people don't have is the experience of losing a child also.
Wow.
So able to relate to those different feelings that I was having, and the depression that I was in, and the just the loss of energy, the just feeling like I just didn't want to live anymore, just the
Mm.
worth. And so, and going to therapy, I was really nervous because again, I had stigma. And
Now, were
what
you in
helped,
the mental health field at that time?
no, I was not. No.
Okay.
I have been working at a college for over 27 years, but I have been working in conflict and resolution in the dean's office, but I had never gone to therapy one-on-one. I've been to a support group in the past, but I've never gone to therapy one-on-one. So that was my first experience.
Wow. So before we delve into that process and that part, tell us a little bit about Charles, because I know, did I say his name correctly?
Yes, Charles.
Okay, because I know that you specifically chose to be on the show and the first Monday of June, you know, to honor him. So tell us a little bit about your son.
Um, his name is Charles Woodrow Reid. Initially, I said Williams because his dad's name was Williams, and his dad was murdered as well. So
Wow.
um, that's why I attended the support group, because I lost his father to murder. But the effect of it was different for me. Um, he graduated from Henry Ford High School, and he attended Oakland Community College where I work, and he worked there for a short time. Just a loving, sweet, silly, 6'2", handsome young man.
Wow. And he had a love for global work, right?
He I put him in a program, this awesome program, through one of the churches that is in our area, and it was for young African American men, and it was called the CAFO program. And what happens is they go through the same rituals that that our ancestors go through in Africa, and they go through the bush. And he went to Senegal. They visited the Gambia. They went through all the rituals, and it was a rites of passage. That's what it was. And so that experience really it changed him, and I learned a lot about Africa through vicariously through his experience.
Wow. And that was one of the things that really compelled me to look into your son's story a little more, because of our connection with Senegal, both of us being connected with Senegal, West Africa. And I can just imagine how life changing that experience was and how enriching that experience was for him.
It really was. He learned a lot culturally, and the things that we assumed how people lived in Africa, and he came home and gave me all the facts.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. And so, what was it like for you to get that message that your son was murdered?
Um, the one word that I always think about is devastating. Um, I had just graduated with my bachelor's degree,
Mm.
and I was in the Bahamas. A friend of mine treated me to the Bahamas, and so a few family members and some friends, we all went as a group, and I got the news while I was there.
Oh my goodness. That's a news that I wouldn't wish on anybody, any mother at all.
No, I wouldn't either.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm glad at least you were around friends, which, that doesn't necessarily make it any lighter, but you had a few support around you.
Yeah, I did. I had a lot of support around me. I had blood relatives and friends. And I have to say the captain and the workers on that ship and even the chaplain, everybody was so good to me. They were extremely supportive and compassionate.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And then you got back stateside, and what happens?
I got back and my family was waiting for me at the airport. And immediately, because you're kind of in shock and you don't want to believe it. And when you hear about those stages of grief, because I know everybody doesn't agree with the common stages of grief, because grief has numerous stages, and we usually only talk about the common stages, but there are numerous stages. But a lot of people don't believe in those common stages. But for me, I do, because I experienced them. A few of them I experienced back to back, and a couple I experienced later. So you don't always experience them at the same time. They don't
Yeah.
have to go in the same type of order. But I most definitely experienced those common stages of grief.
Mm, wow.
So
Tell
when
our
I got back,
audience what are some of those stages for our audience who aren't familiar with them?
well, the first one is shock. And shock is a good, that's a good stage for us because our body protects us. And being in shock, it prevents us from being too overwhelmed with the devastation. And so what happens is you're kind of in a fog. It's like, I heard this news, I believe it to be true, but in the back of my head, I really need to see for myself. So for me, I heard the news. It was a devastating impact, but there was a small piece of me that needed to see the truth for myself.
Mm, wow. Wow. So the shock really kind of protected you.
Yeah, the shock protects everybody that receives devastating news. And there's also a stage, a bargaining stage.
Yeah.
And I most definitely was in a bargaining stage. We were making arrangements, funeral arrangements, and I had already bargained with God before we went the day before. And so when we went, I'm looking at them and they're making arrangements and they're asking me questions, and I'm laughing to myself like they are just they're wasting their time, because I had already bargained with God. And so I was just waiting on my son to pop up any minute so that he can prove his power to everybody,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's what you do, you
Yeah.
bargain like, just give me one more chance to see my loved one. Or for
Yeah.
me, I bargained that we need to go backwards and we need to reverse this. And I want you to show the world how powerful you are, God. And you can use me, I'm your vessel. And so I truly believe that that was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. My goodness. I can't even imagine what that felt like. And
Um,
so,
my son kept looking at me because I kept laughing. And of course, it wasn't a time to laugh, because I couldn't help it, because they were sad and they were making arrangements. I can think back on this, and my sister and I, we talk about it, but we caught eye contact, and all I could do was laugh, and you could just see the hurt in her eyes, and she felt so bad for me because she knew I was worse off.
Wow.
She knew I was
Yeah.
in a bad state.
And then the bargaining that leads to denial, right? There's a denial stage.
Absolutely, there's a denial stage, and because you don't want to believe it. And the more that you participate in the rituals of planning and making arrangements, the more it becomes real. So
Yes.
you kind of avoid it a bit.
Okay. And so your family members were taking on the bigger part of that.
Yeah, yeah. I was there. I mean, I was a part of it, but at the same time, for me, I was thinking we're just going through the motions.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. And when did it hit you that this is real? And if God doesn't raise him, even though we know he can, he's still real.
It hit me that it was real because of what happened to them, because they were murdered. It was a double homicide. It wasn't just my son. It was my cousin's son, my first cousin's son.
Mm.
And because of the way that they were murdered, they had to be identified through their dental records. So we were waiting. This process took almost 10 days. And so we were waiting to get that information back. And so I had that hope. I had bargaining and I had that hope. And once they contacted us and they identified that it was them, that's when it hit me.
Oh my goodness.
And
Wow.
I got then.
You said it again?
Then I got angry.
Oh, tell me about that. Who were you angry with, and did you feel like you had permission to be angry?
I was angry at everybody. I was angry that it happened. I was angry at my son that he allowed that to happen to him. I was angry at my neighbors on the block because they had their children and I didn't have mine.
Oh God.
I was angry at anybody that was enjoying life because, for us as African Americans, we get together and we gather and we eat and we talk and we celebrate life. And I just sat there looking around at people laughing and eating, and I'm thinking in my head, how could they eat? How could they laugh? I was just angry.
Yeah. Wow. So bring us up to when Auntie said, "Hey." What transpired up to the point where she really got a hold of you?
I became really depressed. I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't eaten anything from the day I got the news, so I lost a lot of weight. I was very frail. And even if you are eating when you're really depressed, because grief and trauma affects you physically,
Yeah.
you still lose weight. You still can waste. And I remember I took to my bed and I was always tired. And that's what I was saying all the time. I was tired. And she came in my room one day and she just looked at me and you could just tell that she just had not pity, but she had so much just compassion for me. And she picked me up, and I'm a tall girl, and put me in her arms and rocked me like I was a baby. And she told me that I was going to have to get some help.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And that sunk in.
It did, because she had lost her child and she hadn't said any of the things that you were mentioning early on, things that you shouldn't say to somebody that's grieving,
Yeah.
such as you have to be strong for the kids, because there's a lot of young kids in our family and they were really struggling with this. And I remember one person in particular and I'm not going to say their name, but got the news that the dental records matched, and I was so just devastated because all of my hope that I had was gone, erased. And she said to me, but you knew that they were dead. So, why is it so much more, hurtful for you? And I'm like, because it's real now. Now it's real. So.
Wow. It's something, because no matter what's going on in your life or what you've gone through, you're never prepared to deal with the loss of a loved one.
No, you don't. You really don't.
Especially your child.
I think with the loss of a child, it's a little different. Not to say that any other death is not as devastating, but the difference for that is it's not the natural order of things, right? So you're not grieving for your child, you're grieving for everything that you've worked for all your life. You're grieving for all of those plans that you have in your head for your child. You're grieving for them getting married, having a grandchild. You're grieving for all of that. And so you're kind of lost because you're living your life. Most of us that are mothers, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, most of my life, what I've worked for is for my children, and to make sure they're okay, and all of that was gone. And so I was lost. Like, okay, now who am I? What am I doing?
Right. I love how you say it. It's like you're grieving for the loss of hope, loss of dreams, loss of milestones and transitions. All of that is like a screech. It has come to a screeching halt.
Yes.
So now what?
Yep.
Wow. So tell us, how was this for your other children?
To be honest with you, that's why I wanted to come on Teen Talk Live, is because at that time I wasn't supportive to my other children. My focus was on myself. I was really depressed, and I was really just devastated, and I went through the motions of hugging them, and of course I was there for them when I saw them crying, but I couldn't be there for them in the way I needed to be. And most of the focus was on me. And so people didn't put a lot of focus on them.
Yeah.
And what I've learned over the years, and since I've become a therapist, and with my daughter suffering from trauma because of what happened, I've learned that we most definitely have to focus on the children. We have to, because I never thought about what it was like for my oldest daughter. She sat at the table with her brother all those years having breakfast. They shared a room together. They did so much together. So their relationship was probably closer than our relationship. I probably didn't build a really close relationship with him until later on in his teenage years. But all of those years that those guys were together, so that had to be so devastating for my girls.
Wow. And at that time you had an older daughter and a younger daughter?
Yes.
Okay. What were their ages?
My oldest daughter was 21, and she was home visiting for the summer from college.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old was your youngest?
My youngest daughter was 11.
Oh my goodness. All significant age, milestone ages, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Wow. Okay. And so tell us, you went, how did you find help? How did you know what to do? Where did you go?
I didn't know exactly what to do, but I did have one of my really good friends. She had been seeing a therapist,
Mhm.
and she suggested that I go where she was going. And so I did. And so the thing about what I learned about going to therapy is you really do need to do your research,
Yeah.
and you really do need to find out the therapist's skill set, because I was struggling with grief at the time that I thought, and I should have been seeking out a grief counselor. And
Mm.
so because that individual, the first individual that I went to go see, she didn't have a skill set in grief, the things that I was telling her scared her. So automatically she thought that I needed medication. Automatically she thought that maybe I needed to go to the hospital because I was telling her my truth. And if you don't have a skill set in grief, you wouldn't know that that's normal.
Yes.
Those feelings are.
Oh my goodness. And you're right. For those of you who are watching, it is really important. There's not a one size fit all therapist. You have to really find the person that is prepared, qualified to deal
Yes,
with the issues and have some level of competency in the area that you are struggling. I think that's
yes.
so important. That is a very, very important point. And so you had to break up with your therapist.
No, I didn't necessarily have to break up with her, but I
Okay.
didn't trust her. We didn't form a therapeutic alliance. And so she referred me to the psychiatrist. And so because I hadn't gone through school for therapy, I thought, oh my God, I need to see a psychiatrist. I must really be bad. But it was because she wanted me to have medication. And so at the time, I didn't know, in order for you to get a prescription for medication,
Right.
you have to see a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist, he was the one that sent me to the therapist that was an awesome fit for me. But what really made me open up to um, receiving help, because again, I was nervous. I just did it because I needed to do it, but I wasn't open to receiving the help that I needed. And so I sat down and I basically told him what I told the first therapist. And he said it so nonchalantly. He was just like, "You are not alone." And that got my attention. But what helped me was the why. Why am I not alone? And he said that you are a grieving mother that has lost a child. What you are feeling. And that was the moment that I was open to receiving the help that I needed and to do the work that I need to do so that I could become mentally stable.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it sounds like those were just some really profoundly comforting words that he was able to share with you.
Oh my gosh. And he was a Christian therapist, a Christian psychiatrist. And so we got to share our religion with each other. And I told him about, going to church, and I didn't feel like my praying was helping. And he asked me if I had ever heard of the book of Job.
Mm.
And he opened the book and we studied Job. we read it together. And that transferred over to the therapist that I was seeing later on. And basically the book of Job was my homework for months.
Oh, wow. So you're going to this therapist and you are praying and your faith is being restored and healing is starting to happen, and take us through that piece of your journey a little bit.
Um, that was the hardest part. Um, I thought the hardest part was going to therapy, but the hardest part was doing the work, because there's a level of courage there. There's a level of being vulnerable, and not worrying about how somebody's going to view you when you tell them exactly what's going on. And the guilt. I had a huge amount of guilt. And being a mother, our first instinct is to protect our babies, right? And so I had this amount of guilt because I didn't do my job. And that was the biggest obstacle from me really receiving the help that I needed. So that's what we worked on, the guilt.
Wow. And okay, so what are some of the tools that you have? Because I'm leading up to the point where you, from all of this, ended up developing an amazing tool to help people go through this healing process. So we had the book of Job, we had the psychiatrist, you had the new therapist who had competency in grief. And so what other tools did you have?
Well, this therapist, he not only had competence in grief, he had competence in trauma. And I think he knew all along that I was suffering from trauma from our discussion. And I just didn't know. And so I was having these intrusive thoughts about not being a good mother. I was always jumping. I could be driving and somebody blow their horn. It would make me jump. All of those things, I avoided the area that it happened in, and I have family that live in that area. And I still pretty much don't like going to the area, but I can now. I don't, avoid it like the plague, but there was a lot of avoidance. I didn't want to go to the cemetery. I still kind of don't. I just don't like the cemetery, but I had triggers. It was just everything that led up to the trauma. And so once we started working on the trauma, then I was able to go back and work on the grief. Because with grief, you're grieving a loss. But if you have trauma, you can't get to the grief. You most definitely have to deal with the trauma, because you're pretty much stuck because you're avoiding everything.
Yes, and you're hyper vigilant, and you're getting triggered by everything, so you can't really dig and work at it.
Yeah, my fight or flight, I was stuck in the fight mode always, and I was just always ready and prepared, you know. So
yes. Wow. So, okay, and you had those, and tell us about the tool that you developed. I was intrigued. I'll let you introduce it. I was intrigued by that, and that's why we called it about healing through therapy, prayer, and faith. So, tell us about the tool that you developed.
Well, I developed it's called my Power Punch for Change. And change became a huge impact for me, because it was almost like, has anything ever happened to you and you're like, I cannot believe this happened. I can't believe I'm better, and going through therapy and learning the different things that were wrong with me. And what we did was, we revisited the trauma. Okay. And so in order for it to work, you have to be skilled in trauma. And I couldn't understand. I tried to I wanted to tell everything that was wrong with me and tell the story, but he would always stop me. And we could only do like a piece at a time. Like it was a meal, and he separated the meal and I could have a portion. And once we went over a portion of it, then we processed it. And that took each time we processed it took weeks to deal with that. And then we processed some more, and we processed some more. And I didn't learn until I became a therapist that when you work with trauma clients, that you have to be able to do that. And the way that it was explained to me was, he said that We have to work with a portion of it. We process it. Then he gives me tools that I'm able to take home
Yes.
to cope with, so that I'm not re-traumatized.
Yes.
And so if you're working with someone, with a trauma client, and you don't have a skill set in trauma, you can re-traumatize them.
Yes. And they can get stuck in that trauma.
Yes, because they're only in our office 60 to 90 minutes and they have to go home. And then
Right.
what?
Yes, yes. And those intrusive thoughts, those are very powerful things that
Yeah,
he's telling you. You know, left alone with those thoughts, you could do some damage.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yep. And so just going through that whole journey, I went back to when I was praying. I'm like, well, why didn't my prayers work for me? And so what I learned was it was connected to my faith. And so I, number one, had to learn how to pray. I had to learn how to go in a room by myself, just me, all by myself. And I think is it Mark 6 or Matthew 6? It's one of those scriptures that when you're praying and you're by yourself, just you and God, he rewards you. He sees that you're praying to him. You're not looking for attention. You're not looking for a pat on your back. You're not the one in church that is praying the loudest, the longest. He doesn't care about any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
What he cares about is that you have taken the time to give him the honor and to give him the glory.
Mm-hmm.
And so the second step of it is listening, because we do pray a lot, right? We want something to happen and we pray on it, but we don't listen so that he can give us the answer or guide us in our spirit so we know what to do.
Right.
And so that's what happened for me. I learned how to pray the correct way, and I was obedient to listen, because at first I was hard-headed and I wasn't obedient. I prayed for these things, then I talked about it with other people, and I still asked for their advice and vice versa. But I learned how to have faith. And having faith is believing in the prayer that you prayed for, being obedient to listen so that he can guide you, and somebody else is going to be the vessel, and they're going to make sure that you're successful. So I was guided to the correct therapist, and they were the vessel, and I was successful in my therapy.
Wow, that is amazing. That is such a powerful testimony, really, of prayer and faith and therapy and how they work together to bring about healing. And so tell us about the curriculum that you're building, and what do you hope to do with that? How do you hope to use that?
I hope to learn how to reach other people, to show them, number one, this worked for me, because it did.
Mm-hmm.
And in helping them with the prayer, I have to learn how to be able to make this resonate with somebody else, mm-hmm. so that they learn how to pray. And then so that they know they have to be obedient to listen so that it can work for them. And then find a way to help them remove the stigma from receiving help, because there is a huge amount of stigma in the African American community. Absolutely. And a lot of it, you can't really say it's their fault. It's the environment that they have grown up in. And sadly, therapy just never was a part of it.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that, I would say also the mistrust because of the misuse of so many different things in different industries.
True.
That there is a huge mistrust.
Yes, I agree. Everything plays a part. Our family structure, the media, the community, the school, everything plays a small part in that. So yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. Okay, so when will this be available, or how can people get a hold of it, or do they need to come to you for therapy in order to use this process?
Currently, I have been using it with my clients, and it has been successful. It's not something that I impose on them.
Right.
It's only for those clients that disclose their love for God, or disclose their religion or their spirituality.
Yeah.
And once they do that, then I do offer that, the prayer and the faith combination, because they're already in therapy.
Right, right. That's amazing. So how are your girls doing? And yeah, where are they now in life?
My oldest daughter, she graduated from Clark Atlanta University and went on to get her master's degree. She's a school teacher. She's been a school teacher for about 6 years. She does really well. As a matter of fact, she won last year. She won Teacher of the Year in Georgia.
Yeah.
So proud of her. I'm a new grandma. Yeah. So she's doing really well. She never came back home. College. So a lot of our kids go away to college, and if it's a successful experience, a lot of them don't come home. So she made her life in Georgia. I'm very proud of her.
Awesome, awesome. And how's your younger daughter?
And my younger daughter, she just became an adult. She's 18, a young adult, and she's graduating from high school this week.
Congratulations.
We have a lot of festivities coming up, and she'll be going to college as well. So I'm really proud of them.
Wow. And I know that you have worked with her diligently to address this trauma and grief in her life. And how's she doing with that?
My youngest daughter is doing much better. She did experience trauma. She's still coping with it, as I am. But she's doing much better. But it did hinder her from the growth I would have liked to have seen in high school. And I wasn't aware at the time, but I learned it was due to her trauma. And so she ended up turning it around, and I'm just so proud of her that she's graduating and that she's in a good place.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I know you spent this past weekend just fellowshipping with mothers who've lost their children. So tell us a little bit about that. What was that like for you?
Last weekend I was in Toledo, and I was very fortunate to share space with Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon Martin's mom. And she was, I must say, so down to earth. She spoke, and it wasn't structured or anything. She just spoke from the heart. I would say most of what she said resonated with me, because she also experienced trauma. And I was able to get some questions answered from her and I just felt good. I felt inspired when I left there, and I was so happy for her. I was very happy for her. But a lot of the things that I experienced, she talked about them, and she talked about some of the things that people said that were out of the world that you have to deal with because they don't understand.
Yeah.
And she talked about her faith in God and how it helped her through her journey. So
that's incredible. So as we come to the end of this discussion, again, I just appreciate you being so transparent with us about such a difficult topic. For the mothers who are watching, who have lost a child, whether it's to murder, gun violence, drugs, whatever it is, it's to the mothers who've lost a child. And to those who have surviving children, what's like 3 things you can say to them, that you've experienced, to kind of look out for this and, think about this? What can you give? What in addition can you give to them?
Well, the first thing I would say is to get help for yourself, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we're no good to anybody else anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And oftentimes people think that, they're being strong because they're not being emotional and they're not crying and they're just pushing forward. But that could also be a sign of trauma, because a sign of trauma is avoiding
Yeah.
and pretending to
Yeah.
be okay when you're not, you know? So being intentional, about being okay for real. That's what I tell people. Be okay for real.
For real, for
Because
real.
yeah, for real, because during my journey, people would ask me, "How are you?" And I had the stock answer, and it was just, "I'm okay," because it was like, do you really want to know? Do
Yeah.
you really want me to go into how
Yes.
I feel? So
I thought so.
it was kind of like a stock answer, I'm okay. But I tell people, be okay for real, you know. And the second thing that I would say is to pay attention to your children, because grief and loss affects them as well. Now, some children bounce back easily. They just do. Kids do. But when trauma is involved, it's different, because grief and trauma are different. And so you want to just pay attention to your child. Are they staying in their room too long? Are they taking care of their hygiene? Are they do they have hyper arousal? What is the conversation? Are you talking to your child? What are they talking about? I remember my daughter would always come home, and she would always say she didn't have enough time to finish her work. And
Mm.
so I talked to some of the teachers about giving her some extra time, and it just was never enough time. And I was talking to my therapist one day, and we were talking about it. And I learned about some of the effects of trauma. And when you experience trauma as a child, when you're in your classroom, you're scoping out the entire room to make sure that you're safe.
Yeah.
Because, you have a loss of safety. You're
Yeah.
making sure that the teacher is there and they're safe, and everybody's in their place that they need to be. And once you're done with all that and you're comfortable, and you get ready to do your work, the school hour is almost over. And
Yeah.
so you barely have time to do your work. You didn't hear the assignment because you're too focused and vigilant.
Yeah. That's something, and a lot of people, I don't think, really realize how difficult that is, and especially being in a loud classroom or any sudden noise, or it's so startling, and takes you to that place that you're totally triggered, and then you have to try to contain yourself and bring yourself back into your body. Right. So
Know how. And that's the thing. A lot of children don't. They don't know how to calm themselves down to be back in the moment. You
yeah.
know, you don't give them those tools, they just don't know. And so my daughter and I, we worked with those tools and strategies, and she had a safety box to help her when she was triggered, or if I wasn't home and her back was turned, because that was huge for her. So, I would say make sure you pay attention to your children and make sure that they are okay. And it wouldn't hurt if you suffered um, trauma. It wouldn't hurt to attend a support group with your child. My daughter and I, we've been attending a grief support group with Crime Stoppers on and off for the past going on 8 years.
Wow, that's incredible. Now let me ask you this. Is there a time that's too soon for people to go to a grief group, or to start grief therapy, or to put their children in grief therapy? Like, is do you think there is a time that's too soon?
I would say that, you know, the saying where you have to bear your cross.
Yeah.
I would say give it time.
Mhm.
When you experience a loss, you do have to give it time, because um, grief is inevitable.
Yes.
We all experience it at some time. And the common stages of grief that we talked about, let those happen. And if they happen, and over the course of 1 to 2 months, you start rejoining your activities and doing the things that you enjoy, and everything is going to be different. Nothing's going to be the same,
Exactly.
but you start to feel okay, or you start to feel better.
Yes.
But after, I would say, about 3 months, if you're feeling exactly the same or worse, I would say seek out help.
Yes. Yes. Because uh, when I have a couple of clients or potential clients, and they're like, this just happened, and I want to get my child into therapy, and sometimes I'm hesitant to do it. I'm like, okay, let's give them some time to even process what happened
Yeah,
before we start
exactly.
working on that, and let's see what kind of impact it has on them, so we know what we're working with.
Exactly. With trauma is a little different.
Mhm.
Um, it depends. You need to wait and see. With trauma is, I would say it's only about a month. You want to wait and see, because everybody that experiences a traumatic event do not develop trauma. So aren't traumatized, put it like that.
Right.
Because it's so subjective. It's a personal experience for the individual. So I would say you want to wait about a month and see.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about trauma, and that's a word that is being tossed around a lot. And somebody gave me a really simple, understandable definition of trauma, and they say anything that happens too soon, too fast, too much.
Yep, that's perfect actually, because just think about your entire body being overwhelmed with
Yes.
stress. Like, we deal with stress and we're able to cope with it, but what if you were so overwhelmed that you could
Yes.
not cope at all?
Yes. Because it happens so fast, so much, and so soon. And so it's like we don't, even though you might be a healthy individual, you don't necessarily have time to access those coping mechanisms.
No, because you're overwhelmed.
Yes.
And the stress, people don't realize how powerful stress and anxiety is. It
Yeah.
is so
Yes. Yes. And we have to pay attention to that. Well, Mia, oh my gosh, this has been so, so good. And I appreciate you again.
I have
Go ahead.
the third,
Yes.
you asked for three,
Yes.
and the third takeaway would be you are not alone. And a lot of
Mhm.
people think that is cliche, but I would say to them, you are not alone, and then give a why. Because you are not alone, you're going to get their attention, but give them the why they are not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good. And it's always, to me, I think we are built for community, and to be able to thrive in a community that understands your pain and understands your struggle.
Yes,
Being able to be empathetic, you can receive
yes,
all of that. I think that is such a component of healing. And,
yes,
I love that you are not alone.
yes, me too. And again, it when I hear, like when I heard Sabrina Fulton,
Yes.
that's all I could think about. You are not alone,
Wow.
because he was saying a lot of the same things that I was thinking.
Wow.
So,
That's amazing.
yeah.
Well, tell our viewers where they can reach you.
Okay. You can reach me at www.changehappenstoday.com. That's my website. My website has everything. It has all of my social network handles. Um, you can also go to my business page, which is www.facebook.com/Change Happens, Mia Reid. And you can get some motivational, inspirational, just love.
That's so amazing. Thank you so much, Mia. Again, my condolences. I'm sorry that you and your family has had to endure this. I appreciate the fact that you've turned your pain into helping others heal through their journey as well. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to share this with us.
I thank you for having me on, and I just want people to know that I'm in a good place. I really am, and I'm still excited that I was able to come out on the other side, because I know a lot of people aren't able to move forward. So it's my purpose now to help as many people as I can to get where I am.
That's so amazing. And you are just a living witness that there is life on the other side
Yeah.
of the tragic loss of a child.
Yes.
Well, thank you again, and I appreciate you. Enjoy your festivities this week, and congratulations on everything that's happening.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night. Good night, everyone. Okay. I'm still having struggles to end it. Okay, come on now. Do it.